So just to recap very, very briefly and in the most condensed way what we've been studying about, and then we'll continue on here. Maybe the latest theme we've been speaking about is the theme of angels. Now, there are many different types of angels. We said some angels are created for permanence, and some are just temporary. We have also different levels of angels. There are angels that are very lowly, and they usually come from the world of formation. And then you have angels that are a little bit higher. Some angels can even come from the world of creation, where the souls come from, where we come from. Remember, there are four worlds: the world of action, the world of formation, the world of creation, and the world of emanation. So the different levels of angels. And then you have angels that not only God creates, but angels that we create. Each time we do a mitzvah, we create an angel. Each time, God forbid, we do a chet, which is a deviation. It's not, the usual word is the word sin, but that's not the Hebrew word. The Hebrew word for sin is chet, which means deviation, because we're deviating from our alignment. Then we create a bad angel. That bad angel can very well be also temporary, because if we do teshuvah, if we return to ourselves, the bad angel goes away. Unlike the good angels that are created stay with us forever in this world and in the next. So that's what we've been speaking about. And I suggest we just dive right back in. Let's continue on here. As you said, Gila, at the very bottom of page 8. Mm-hmm. That which is ordinarily invisible. Okay. So the idea here is that, again, and I think in many ways, this is one of the main goals of this book altogether, not just of what we're learning about and of this chapter, but of the book altogether, is to inculcate in us that we are living a multi-dimensional life, not just a one-dimensional life. Part of those dimensions is the dimensions of angels. They can't always be visible, even though sometimes some people may say that they saw angels, and I would believe them. But for the most part, they cannot be seen. For most people, they cannot be seen, but it doesn't mean they don't exist. And they, in many ways, are in charge of our lives, and or not in charge, but have a say on our lives more than we think they may have a say on our lives. So that's really the goal of this book, and that's what we've been talking about. And that's where the theme of angels also fits, in the theme of the invisible, as he calls it here. Let's continue. Bottom of page 8, which is ordinarily invisible. Does anyone want to read?
I'll read.
Please.
That which is ordinarily invisible is seen only through appropriate instruments of transmutation or interpretation when, in the language of the Kabbalah, they are dressed in the clothes or vessels that make it possible for us to apprehend them. As, for example, radio or television waves have to be transmitted through appropriate vessels to be revealed to our senses.
Mm-hmm. Right. So again, we're talking about this invisible world that is very much a part of this world. And by the way, I just want to maybe make this more relatable. But if you think about this, in Judaism, we close our eyes all the time. We close our eyes when we light Shabbat candles, close our eyes when we bless our children, we close our eyes when we say the Shema, we close our eyes when we say Yizkor. We close our eyes all the time. Why do we close our eyes so often? And the answer is really because God wants us to see the invisible. And if our physical eyes are open, they just serve as a distraction to seeing the invisible. So we have to close our eyes. And when we close our eyes, then we could start seeing the invisible. This is really what we're speaking about here. God wants us to know that there's an invisible dimension that is very, very much influencing this very physical dimension. And we must be able to see it. Maybe not see it physically, but again, see it in our mind, see it spiritually. Just imagine we lived in a world where we saw souls and we did not see bodies. It would be a very different world, but that's the world that God wants us to live in. The bodies that we see, fine, are just a part of this physical dimension. But what we should really be seeing is the soul in every person, the soul in everything, even in this table, even this laptop right here, even in this book. It's easier to see the soul in this book with the holy words that are here, but still, to see the soul in everything. You know, it's almost like Helen Keller famously said, who was blind. She said that there's one thing that is worse than becoming blind, and that is having sight but no vision. So in many ways, this is what we're speaking about. We want to develop this vision to be able to actually see the angels, see the multi-dimensions that are part of this world. And this is the goal really of life altogether, to be able to see souls, not bodies. So that's what we're speaking about. And that's why, again, we close our eyes so often. Now, many ways, we are capable of it, and this is what Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying. It just like we're capable of saying of at least knowing about the electromagnetic fields in the world of science, or we're capable of knowing that there are vibrations, sometimes even feeling them in this world that come from an outer dimension. So we're capable of it, and it's the goal to live with that capability actualized, so that every experience that we have, and even every moment that we're in, we're actually perceiving the world with that vision, not just with that eyesight. You know, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, especially towards the end of his life, would repeat the phrase. I remember it, and it's ringing in my ears all the time. But that one must open his eyes. It's interesting because in Hebrew, there are two words for opening your eyes. Liftoach et ha'einayim, right, to open your eyes, or lifkoach et ha'einayim. Lifkoach really doesn't mean to open. Koach comes from the word pikeach, which means wisdom. If you want to be wise, then you have to open your eyes, but not these eyes. These eyes here, or these eyes here. That's how you become wise. Lifkoach. And the Rebbe would repeat that sentence time and time again. It's time to open our eyes to this new reality that's coming, the messianic reality. And when we open our eyes, again, these eyes, then we become wise. Then we have pikhut. Then we have wisdom. But the only way to achieve that is, again, to first and foremost know that there's other dimensions, that they influence us, that they're very much a part of us. And number three, to communicate with them. That's really the only way to attain this ultimate wisdom. So we're capable of it, and therefore we must actualize that capability. Let's just continue here and finish this paragraph. And unless there's comments, questions, disagreements, because that's what it's all about. Remember, please speak up.
Rabbi, well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, please. No, that's what we just said. That's what it's about. That's what it's about.
Okay.
Please, yeah.
So will there be an opportunity for you to share some strategies, like how to do this?
Yeah, I think Rabbi Steinsaltz touches upon this, but definitely, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Good question. No, good point. Let's finish this paragraph, and then I want to get to this. Yeah. Top of page 9. Does anyone want to read? Who was reading before? You want to continue, Karen? Go for it.
In the same way, there are aspects of the reality of the spiritual world of which we are only vaguely conscious. Even animals can sometimes be sensitive, if to a limited degree, to the presence of such a spiritual essence.
Mm-hmm.
The ass of
Balaam, who was prophet who came to curse the Jewish people, right?
For instance, who saw an angel, did not, of course, actually see an angel. Probably the animal had some obscure sensation of being confronted or threatened by something.
Right. Okay, very good. Yeah, so even animals, and I know there are researchers, I'm sure you've heard of that cat in a hospice in the East, I think in Massachusetts, who was able to really perceive the angel of death, to see the angel of death. He knew when you were aware of that study, he knew of the patients that were dying, and he would go to them to comfort them before they died. And lo and behold, they started noticing that wherever the cat would go, that's the room in which the person would soon be dying. So he sensed the death of the person before it actually happened. Maybe because that same cat saw the angel of death. But animals are able to sense that in a limited way. But like we said here, the donkey of Bilam, who went on to curse the Jewish people, to try and curse the Jewish people. Thank God his curses would turn into blessings. But it's a story in the Torah, in the book of Numbers. He saw the angel that stood along the way, trying to stop Bilam from moving on, to carry out these curses. Bilam, who was a prophet, did not see the angel, even though he was a prophet, but his own donkey did. And there are many other stories that in which we see that animals really are much more perceptive sometimes than human beings, even the Bilams of the world. And by the way, it's not just animals, but Maimonides says, based on the Talmud, that prophecy or this perception is given to since Mashiach, since the temple was destroyed. When the temple existed, the epicenter of holiness, of divinity existed in this world. That was the portal. Still is in many ways, but not as prevalent, as dominant as it used to be. But when the temple existed in Jerusalem, then divinity was flowing and anyone could access this perception. But ever since it was destroyed, God gave this perception or God took it away from everybody, but he left it for the children and for the fools. So, because when you're foolish, what's a fool? A fool is someone who refuses to be in a way encaged in the physical dimension of this world. That's why he's a fool. He breaks those limits. So he's able to have this perception. Children also are able to have this perception because of their innocence and purity. So I remember that Rabbi Steinsaltz would often say that if you're not sure of something, I have many examples for that, but for example, someone wanted to name an organization that he had, and he didn't know what name to give the organization. Rabbi Steinsaltz says, go and ask a child. Children have the best perception for that. But many other instances, but he would refer people to children because they have that innocence, they have that level of perception, so do fools. But in many ways, we can all attain this level of perception. Now, the question becomes how? How? So there are many very practical ways. Some are known, some are unknown. But first of all, you have to be completely in line with your intuition. And to attain that, you have to be, like we said in the previous class today, to be true to yourself. Not to be intimidated by those who may mock you. You have to be aligned with yourself, and then you can be aligned with your intuition. I think number two, meditation does that. When you meditate on something, but when meditation that is really focused on one idea or one thing alone, if your meditation jumps around, it's not going to work. But if your meditation contemplates for a very long time, and the Rabbi Steinsaltz would do that, sometimes he would stare at a piece of the wall for hours, just stare at it. Today, we can't focus for more than 3 seconds on anything. That's why they tell you that if you're going to post something online, then it can't be more than 8 seconds long, because God forbid, people are not gonna have attention. We have an attention span less than a goldfish. Really, that's what they say today. But anyway, when you have that time of attention span, then you can't necessarily achieve that. But when you can meditate and then think and contemplate, then you get to the inside dimension. So that's another method. Another method is prayer. Not just meditation, but prayer. Why? Because prayer is connecting to that which is greater than you, to the divine. When you connect to the divine connects to you. And the divine then empowers you. But prayer doesn't just mean having lip service, as they say. Prayer really means that you are throwing your whole heart and soul into the words of the prayer in order to connect. I'm thinking, but Rabbi Steinsaltz used this example. So I don't know if it's appropriate or not. Should I or shouldn't I? But now Rabbi Steinsaltz would say that prayer is like having an intimate relationship with God. And when you're in an intimate relationship, you don't count how long is it going to be. You don't think about it even. You're just in it. You're present. That's connection. So in many ways, that's what it means to pray. And when you're praying, then you attain the other dimension. And then the other in the same line or in the same train of thought, another method, the other methods too, but another method is coming out of yourself. How so? By helping someone else. When you help someone else and you come out of yourself, then God helps you come out of your physical self too. Then you're able to see also other dimensions. So that's yet another method. Rabbi Steinsaltz, I think he's going to touch upon that in chapter 2. But yeah.
Is there like a preparation? Like, for example, so we know when our next class is going to be in 2 weeks, God willing. So what would happen if we all, you never know, but what would happen if we all have in mind that over the next 2 weeks, we're going to, let's say, engage in some meditation, some prayer, whoever wants to, whoever doesn't, fine, but see if there's some kind of activity going on. And then when we get together in 2 weeks, maybe we'll have a glimpse of each other's neshamas. Like something like an exercise that would give us something to think about, like a goal. Is that acceptable? Would that be an acceptable
I think that's a great thing. Absolutely. I think that's a great thing. The only thing is that every method speaks to every other. I don't think there's one size fits all.
Right, for sure.
I don't think, there's one method that can fit everybody. So it really depends on you, but take one of these methods that we just spoke about and go and try to do it consistently every day for the next 2 weeks. Then tell us in 2 weeks how you felt about it. It could just be as simple as staring at the mountain here on this water bottle. We have a few water bottles here. Just try and stare at this mountain here and meditate on it for half an hour. We'll get 2 hours, half an hour. We can barely look at it for 2 seconds, but half an hour will change your whole perception of the mountain, of the divinity in the mountain.
Or hearing your words, for example.
No, my words are not so.
Well, your words for sure through Rabbi Steinsaltz, through the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So if we do, whoever wants to engage in this and then we have it in mind. Before, and then we come together. And then whatever we feel.
That's right.
It's all personal. It's all internal. Nobody will know. If you didn't do it, there won't be any grades. It's just a personal.
Absolutely,
thing.
A personal exercise.
I personally think I'm going to try it. See what happens.
But by the way, you just mentioned another method, like connecting to the holy. For me, it's Rabbi Steinsaltz, it's the Lubavitcher Rebbe, there's no doubt. But when you connect to someone that's truly holy, not like me, someone that's truly holy, and you listen to them and you absorb their words and you really just bask in their light, then you attain a higher dimension. And the more you do it, the more you're elevated. Now, I will add also, if we really want to be technical about this, that I think also everyone has a different time of the day or of the night in which they can work on themselves more effectively, right? Some people are night owls, they say, and some people are morning, what are they called? Early birds, right? Some people, so you have to find the time of the day in which you feel like you're most in tune, and then put all your efforts during that time. So that's to be really technical about it. Yes, Nina.
Yes. There's the word mantra. You can pick up a word or a sentence that really speaks to you, and that's going to be your mantra, which means that anytime you don't have to sit and meditate, but run this in your mind. What's happening is that your focus is on that thing and not all the distraction around. And that's what's going to start to slowly get you into, deep state, concentration.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Also taking
Yes, that's right. There's no doubt. Going to the mikveh helps a lot. Hasidic Jews go to the mikveh every day. Women go once a month. But in many ways, I think having that purity, being immersed in it, and And God's water, rainwater is God's water. It's not touched by human beings. Also helps remove at least all of the negativities that enables you to be that recipient. Yeah, so there are many different methods. Look, just to go back to the Torah itself, the animals seeing God's angels, like Bilam's donkey and everything. I would say that I want to take you just to the story of Abraham who encountered angels, which is what we're speaking about. But there's a big argument among the commentaries whether when Abraham saw those three angels approaching his tent, whether he knew that they were angels or not. And one commentary says that he did not know that they were angels. He just wanted to welcome guests. That's what he did every day. That was his passion. So he finally saw these three people coming, not knowing that they were angels, and he welcomes them. And it even says that nitzavim alav, v'hine shlosha anashim nitzavim alav, that these three angels were standing above him. So he was on the level of a human being, and they were standing above him, and he wasn't at the same level, and therefore he wasn't able to see them. But then he started serving them with food, with delicious food, big dinner. And after he serves them, and they eat, even though angels can't really physically eat, but they eat, then it says, Vehu omed alehem tachat ha'etz, that he was standing above them. The beginning, before he did the mitzvah of welcoming guests, they were standing above him. Once he welcomed them in and fed them, then he was standing above them. Then he realized that they were angels. And that's when he said, bless me. So it goes back to that method, that sometimes all that is needed is to come out of ourselves, to do something good selflessly, specifically when it's difficult. Because if you're doing it just for your good feeling, I'm going to feel good about it, then you're doing it for yourself. But if you're doing it, even if you see no benefit, even when it's extremely difficult, and it will remain difficult after you do it, and you still do it, that's when God says, okay, then you'll be higher than angels, and then you'll be able to attain therefore the perception. Now you're seeing angels. So that's what I'm saying. That's also one of the methods, again, rooted in the story from the Torah. Okay, let's continue, unless there's other comments or disagreements. No? Okay. Angels have been revealed. Does anyone?
Angels have been revealed
Yeah.
to human beings in either of two ways. One is through the vision of the prophet, the seer, or the holy man. That is an experience by a person on the highest level. The other is through an isolated act of apprehension by an ordinary person, suddenly privileged to receive a revelation of things from higher level.
Right. And just one more line maybe, and even so.
And even so, when such a person or prophet does in some way experience the reality of an angel, his perception, limited by his senses, remains bound to material structures, and his language inevitably tends to expressions of actual or imagined physical forms.
Right. So this goes back to what we were saying, because if you think about this, there's a tremendous contradiction. If angels are heavenly, then they cannot be contained by the physical, cannot be perceived by the physical, because it's physical. The physical can at least perceive the spiritual. You have to be spiritual in order to see spiritual. Now, from time to time, we are given the gift, and maybe it's happened to some of you here on the table, but we are given the gift to actually see angels. But that's because we're elevated to our spiritual self, and then we can see those spiritual angels. But when we see them, because we're still seeing them with or from emitting from our physical self, they are tied, those angels are tied to some physical structure, to some physical image, even though they are not physical. So going back to Abraham, just to explain this maybe a little bit better. Abraham welcomed these guests. They appeared as human beings. They appeared to even eat like human beings. But angels are not human beings, and angels certainly don't eat. But because angel is living in this world, he saw angels in the influence of this world, which is physicality. So angels, we have to remember, are not physical, but they may appear physical when they are revealed to us. Now, I know of people, we were speaking about this the other day, but I know of people who saw angels in hospitals, for example, who came to, no one else saw them. How they got in the room where the loved one was lying down in a sick bed, no one knows. But they saw those angels. They saw them very often in some physical fashion, but they saw angels
How did they know?
because no one else saw them.
What did they look
That's
So
the
it
question.
depends. Again, it depends on how people perceive them. It depends on what state you're in.
Can I talk about a personal experience?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I didn't see an angel, but when I stepped into the waiting room next to the operating room where my mother ultimately died, a cold wind enveloped me.
Mm.
So it was a physical thing.
Right. Right.
And nobody felt the wind, only I felt it.
Right.
So there was,
No doubt. Yeah.
But when my aunt died, which was not like, it wasn't like, she was elderly, but it wasn't like expected.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of like I saw this beam of light. And then, at that point, I didn't know she had passed. And then a few minutes later, my cousin called to tell me my aunt had passed.
Mm.
And I thought, did you ever hear anything like that?
I mean, yes, it could very, very well be that this was an angel. Look, usually, and I'm just quoting what Kabbalah says, but usually angels have three things in common. They appear in all sorts of different forms, but they have three things in common. One is what you just said, that there's movement, there's wind or life to them. The other one is some level of whiteness. They very often appear white clothes or at least a white aura, and light. Suddenly illuminate the room. Something that's so these are three things that they all have in common. And then on top of that, you have all sorts of other things too, depending again on the purpose of the angel, on the perception of the person, whether he sees the person with his coming from a thicker physical self, so to speak, or a thinner one, or more refined one. Depends a lot on the person himself experiencing the angel. But those are three things that angels have in common. All sorts of angels. Now, I'm not saying that people should elucidate and that every experience is an angelic experience. No, that's not what this means. But what this means is that if we are in tune, especially with those methods that we spoke about before, then we'll have more chances of seeing angels. Maybe not necessarily angels, but at least seeing again the divine in everything, the soul in everything, that other dimension in everything. And I really believe that holy people see it all the time. I think the Lubavitcher Rebbe had that gift. He saw it all the time. Now, we can experience it, once in a while. But if you live in that dimension, then you see that dimension. We don't live in that dimension, so we don't always see that dimension. Yes.
Sometimes I think it happens to all of us to enter into a room and feel a bad energy in that space, or feel a good energy. It's that.
Yeah.
Would that be?
So feeling is certainly one way of perceiving the other dimension. I think it's the lower way, sensing, but here we're talking about actually seeing, not just sensing. But certainly, I think everyone, even you don't have to be so developed, but everyone can feel, can sense energies in rooms, etc., in people. To see it is a whole different thing. But I really believe that in Messianic times, every one of us will attain that level of consciousness in which we'll actually be able to see the angels. We'll see this world very differently, and it's coming. So you better be ready. Get your goggles out or your binoculars. Yes. Whoever wants to go first. Yes.
I was really close to my dad.
Mm-hmm.
At 5 o'clock in the morning, when he passed away, I was screaming in my sleep. My husband woke me and he said, "What's going on?" And we were screaming, and I said, somebody was trying to kill me. 20 minutes later, my mother called and said, "Your father passed away." So is that, what is that?
I'm sorry. Who said that someone's trying to kill me? Your father said that?
No,
No.
that was my dream. I was.
Oh, that was your
Yeah,
dream.
but
I
was
see.
screaming.
Yeah. So it could be that you saw the angel of death. It could very well be that you saw the angel of death that came to.
My experience
Was that you saw the angel of death coming for your dad? Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Does intuition come into play?
Yeah. The more in tune you are with your intuition, the more you can perceive what we're speaking about. Now, intuition shouldn't be confused also with, other things like, spirits of folly, I would even say. Intuition really means that you didn't think about the thing. You're not using your mind, not using your brain, you're not using your heart, your emotions. Something else completely. Intuition means that you're using your soul.
Just know.
Yeah. Without thinking or overthinking, without feeling or overfeeling. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, sometimes you dream of somebody that you love that's halfway, and it feels so real.
Mm-hmm.
That's one question. Then there are people that feel that they can talk. A medium, I know somebody who's Jewish,
Mm-hmm.
and she feels since she's been a little girl, she was able to see things in people's lives. And what do you think of that? If, like, I wanted to go to a medium to talk to somebody. I mean, I don't know what it is in the Jewish.
Look, right. So I'll answer first question one, I'll get to the medium to question two. Dreams, absolutely. Dreams carry a lot of prophecies. Now, sometimes we don't know how to interpret them. Sometimes they actually mean something else than what we think they mean. But there's certainly a lot of meaning to dreams. The Talmud dedicates a whole chapter in the Tractate of Brachot to dreams. And they say that when you see your loved ones, when you see the righteous in a dream, then it's called, in the Talmud, it's called great nevuah gdolah, great prophecy. And dreams say a lot. Now, it doesn't mean that if you see something in a dream that it's necessarily going to happen either. But it does mean that there's some level of prophecy there that needs to be interpreted. Regarding mediums, yes, we can communicate with souls. I think you don't even need a medium to that. I think most people can do that. The only problem with mediums is that it's not a problem of communicating to souls, but it's a problem of bothering souls. Souls are resting, or at least are basking in a divine pleasure in the upper worlds that they don't want to be. It's painful for them if they are asked to come out of that world to communicate with us. Now, they do very often decide by themselves to come and communicate with us. If they decide to communicate with us, great. But for us to have the audacity even to take them out of that divine pleasure for our own little issues that they can barely relate to, I think that's problematic. So that's why it's very much discouraged in Judaism to use a medium, because we shouldn't bother souls. On the other hand, when souls come down to us, then it was their decision. Then we can communicate with them as much as we can. That's what happens on the yard site. On the yard site, the soul comes down to this world, and then we can communicate with it, and it can communicate with us. That's why, I have a friend who just told me yesterday. It's fascinating because he was thinking about this person that had passed 2 days ago, and he actually decided to call the relative of that person out of nowhere they hadn't spoken to, and this and that. And then towards the end of the day, he realized that it was this person's yahrzeit. And it's no doubt in my mind, it was this soul coming down to my friend saying, hey, I'm here. So he's communicating with him. And that happens all the time. And we see that in dreams very often too. That's the souls coming down and sharing a message with us. Now, the souls of the righteous is a whole different story, because the souls of the righteous really never rest. They take care of us from the upper worlds. And as the Torah says, that they have no rest, not in this world and not in the world to come. And in fact, the Talmud even says that if not for the righteous in the upper worlds, this world could not remain existent, not even for a split second. So they are in constant communication with us.
You're praying every night, saying, all your loved ones who passed away to rest in peace. I'm assuming that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to rise them up or, take them out.
Sure. You can send prayers to them, send mitzvahs to them. That elevates them even more, like we spoke about last time. But to bother them like mediums do and ask them, should I do this? Should I get this job? Should I not get that job? Should I? That's not respectful to the soul. Yeah. Yes, Nina.
The question is if our soul continue to communicate while we're alive on higher levels.
While we're in this world, yeah, it can. But that also demands a lot of work. I think that the souls of the righteous certainly can. They can communicate to the highest of levels, with the highest of levels. We, and I'm talking about without mediums, right? Yeah. And in fact, so to go deeper in Kabbalah, it says that 3 times a day, we have the potential to do that. And that's why we are praying the Amidah. While we are praying the Amidah, the 18 blessings, Shemona Esrei, that's the highest level of prayer. That's when we have this intimate meeting with God. And that's also when we're able to attain and communicate with the highest souls, the highest of levels. So that's one time. Otherwise, it's harder, but it's certainly achievable. I'll say one more thing, and that is that sometimes we also don't need to exercise or exhaust ourselves too much in order to communicate with higher levels, because these souls are with us. They're always with us. These angels are with us, always with us. When we walk, we're never walking alone. We never walk alone. Even if you're alone in a forest, you're not alone in the forest. In fact, the word alone should be abolished, because it doesn't exist. If you really are aware of these multi-dimensions, where you have angels with you, and we have souls that are protecting you, then you're never alone. You really are never alone. And in many ways, this is also why it's interesting. But the word for alone in Hebrew, so we say it, Lo tov hiyot adam levado, is levad, alone. But levad in Hebrew actually means, there's another word in Hebrew that says bad bevad, together. Levad, the word alone in Hebrew, means together. Bad, like badim, bad bevad. Bad bevad, agil chamash, right? Together. Because if you are really digging into your aloneness, you'll see that you're together with so many other people. Not physical people, but souls, angels. So really, we're never alone. The aloneness has a lot of togetherness. And that's really the goal of this chapter, to be able to open up our eyes, our spiritual eyes, to this true reality where we're always together.